Can you follow that path?
You're going.
Okay.
If he has 2014, do I need to make yours going once or?
What?
2014, I need 2015 one time, 2015, and 2014 one's work as well.
Oh, are they compatible? No, they're not. They're not. If he's got, sorry, you're on 14. Are you on? I got 15. You're on 15. You can go out. So you can take his content.
Okay, I can take that.
But you can't.
I think
You can't pass it back.
All right. No, we still need that. We still need that.
Still on track with site this next session?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. I'm a landscape architect. So
Okay, well,
I'm here. You don't have to, I'm not expecting, deep
the
site
tools
stuff,
will
but-
probably disappoint a little bit because they're not great.
Well, it's okay, because what I'm interested in is what we can offer we're going to offer a fourth engineering course, and it's going to cover BIM for landscape architects. And we're trying to, so many of them are asked to work on that or be conversant with it in offices with architects and teams of engineers and so forth, that it makes sense to see what it does offer, and where we can go with it. And, what we can do as little projects or assignments in the class. So I'm hopeful to at least get a skimmed view of it at least. And
yeah. I think where Autodesk is going, have you looked at InfraWorks at all?
no, I haven't.
It's there's a couple different versions. There's a desktop version, a mobile version, and stuff. And it will take. I'm not a civil engineer, I'm not a landscape architect. I've just seen the sales pitch.
Yeah.
But it will take, GIS data, all this different kind of data, and mash it together and create a model that then you can do your roadway planning and stuff on. So we've got 2 or 3 guys on the civil side that know that a lot better.
It's called InfoWorks?
Infra,
Infra.
INFRA.
Like infrastructure?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's an Autodesk product?
It's an Autodesk product.
Let's keep it. Have to try that out for sure. Well, good. Look forward to it.
If you want to make a note when we do the survey, InfoWorks on there, and if you put your email on there,
Okay.
and at least email you a link to the page.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Hope you find it.
Great. Yeah. Should I pick these up after? Is that-
Yeah. You can remember all that? And I just emailed our support guys. To ask them if that's another issue. So I'll see before the day, see if they respond.
Well, I noticed when you were, when you were talking about some of the keynotes and you were zipping through what looked to me like CSI headings.
I didn't know.
We use all of our materials from our catalog in CSI, and we use the CSI headings as our subject headings. So it would be a natural to tied in some way. So, but the kinds of things I can see, like, just for instance, some of the more fun things that we have out there, like translucent concrete. And let's say one of the walls would have been killed for some utilizing that. Let's find a way to kind of mimic all of this, because that's kind of a huge piece in a design. That might be the keynote elements, it's like, oh, and we have this really cool thing, or we have this really cool thing. So, and right now, who's my son? She has big art files for most of her favorites and stuff. Well, that one people just, they don't remember. And so, all those ones, because they don't feel. And so, I'm going to get back to using it for these various materials. Even if it's, something like, well, just like, what's it called? Woollen. There's places you can specify stuff like that. No one knows what it is. We're not even used to it. And whenever I talk to students, it's like, we don't know those products out there. It really depends what you design. So, that they can come in and download, and they don't have to create it. Right. Because that's our hope, is that we have it, we create it, and then all they have to do is come in and download it, they can use it. Easy enough, this can be used, so. Yeah, I can see, because I can see a lot of kinds of exterior surfaces and all that stuff using some of those. So we'll just have to work on how to make that happen.
We were able
Hmm?
to, we were able to get the
Okay. Well, I'll see if our tech guys respond.
When you put a shaft in, how do you get it to not go through the roof?
To not cut something,
Like to not go through the roof? Or go through the-
pull the top of it down. That work?
Yeah. You know, good thing that-
Is there another class happening now? We look a little light. Should I go ahead and get started, or? Okay. So the next section here is on site and rendering and those kinds of things. We talked about a little bit about visual styles and stuff, but we'll I'll go through those again a little bit. So starting with site, site tools in Revit are, they're adequate design tools. They're not necessarily anything you're going to do any site engineering with. But there are, if you understand how they work a little bit, they're adequate to put something together that looks like a realistic site to help communicate your design. So the site tools are here on the massing and site ribbon, and there's just a few tools here. We'll start with a topo surface, and when I click that tool, I need to turn it on. Let's go to a different view. Let's go to a site view where it's already turned on. Get these off. Okay, when I click on topo surface, I have over here a modify edit surface, and I've got a few different options. I can place a point or create from an import, whatever I want to do. By default, I'm placing points, and I've got in my option bar here an elevation and an option just to set it to the absolute elevation. So I can start picking points, and based on the points that I place, Revit will start to extrapolate a topo surface based on those points. So as you can see, as I place points here, this is actually doing this in 3D, so if I pick some more points, different elevation, it starts to build that topo up. So if you've got maybe an image or it's a scan or something like that that you can overlay and just start to pick points and build that topo up, or make some reasonable estimations what the topography is doing based on pictures or whatnot, you can do that. When I'm done with that, I hit the green check, and there's my topo surface, and we've got a nice little hill there. So that's kind of the simple way to do that. Another option here, I've got a sample, where did it go? A sample survey file like that I might get from a civil engineer. Where is my, there they are, sample files. So a simple little AutoCAD file. I'm going to go ahead and link that in, and you can see, okay, I'm in a 3D view here, and you can see that those things have some Z values to them. Okay, I can use that to build my topo surface. Okay, so here on my massing and site, hit topo surface. Instead of placing points, I'm gonna select an import. Okay, so I can pick that. This gives me an option to pick which layers that I want to look at. So there's a bunch of stuff in here that is not related to the topography. I don't necessarily want everything. Actually, let me do it once with everything so you can see what that does. And I go ahead and hit OK, and it goes through and looks at all those layers in that AutoCAD file, places points at the appropriate elevations, and generates that topo surface. And you can see why I don't just want to pick all the layers in mass, because it's placed this point down here at the corner of that, whatever that boundary is, that is not necessarily part of the topography. It's just part of the graphics in that file. So let's go back and do this again, and just pick the contour layers. Okay, and now we're not getting those little cliffs there on the edge of our topo. Okay, so there's our topography. We can control where is that sitting? there we are. Here under the, on the site panel of the massing and site, we can hit this settings menu here, and this will let us control how many contours we see. So right now we're seeing 1 foot contours. If I maybe want 2 foot contours, I can change that, and whatever the look it is that I want, I can change those. The 10-foot intervals up here are the primary contours. These at the secondary increment are secondary contours. I can control the graphics of those under my visibility graphics. Down under topography, I've got separate subcategories for the primary and secondary. So if I want my secondary contours to be a little lighter or half-tone, whatever, I can do that there. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. We can start to edit the contours here for our project. The survey that I got in is a survey of existing conditions. So if I want to start to do some grading here, and again, this is not I'm not engineering the site by any means, but I can start to do some grading. So these points are at 20 feet, so I can start to place some points out here, 20 feet, and start to pull these contours out a little more, and maybe just erase these contours. And wherever those points are, right, it's just going to interpolate between there. So I've started to create a flat spot there on my site. Again, I can erase a bunch of these in here. Okay, place some more points, 20 feet. Okay. Probably not necessarily good site design, but I've created a kind of a big flat area where I might place a building. I haven't really graded this steeper slope here or anything. Again, it's design communication. It's not necessarily engineering. Okay. The topo surface, the material. If I pick the surface, I've got a parameter here for material. So, by default it kind of looks like dirt. But if I want to change it to something that is a little more grass-like, I can do that if I want to. There we go. All right. I don't know why it's choosing that acoustic ceiling. That's odd. Strange. Okay. But I can assign a material there. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, so there we got a little bit of pale dried out grass. There. So a couple things you can do with with this topo surface, once you have this laid out, first thing you may want to do is to locate your building. Best practice, really, if you're working with a site and a building, is keep them in two separate files and link them together. It's going to be easier to work with. You can just turn the site off and work on the building, and work on the site separately, and kind of isolate that work a little bit. When you need to, it'll be more efficient on your computer. So first thing I want to do in here is maybe locate a building pad. So got a tool to do that, and I got all my same sketch tools here. So I'm just going to locate a building pad in here. The building pad is it's based on a level, and it's going to want the height offset from that level. So I think we were 20 feet, so I'm just going to set this at 18 feet there. And you can see that building pad just kind of creates a flat spot for the building. In fact, if I hadn't done that grading and flattened this out a little bit, it would have just cut right through the grading. Okay. So let's see, we can look at that. We pull this back into the side of that hill a little bit. It's just gonna cut that hill straight down. Okay, so if we've got a site with some topography where we're building in the side, we can set that building pad. Another thing we can do to start to make this look like our site, or to work with it a little bit, we may want to, if we've got a particularly large site, we may want to split our surface, okay, and subdivide our site a little bit, so that we're only working with the topography that is part of our project area. You know, if you've got a site that's 20 or 30 acres, but your building is only taking up 3 acres, you may want to cut out that little piece of topography and just really work with that, and just use the rest of it for context. So we've got a split surface tool here that will let us pick that, and we can just split this in half if we want to, and then it just divides these into two separate pieces that we can work with independently. They still match up. They still all align, but now they're two separate pieces. Okay. Another tool here is the subregion, and the subregion would be a way to define different areas on that topography. So we may have an area out here that is a paved area for whatever reason. It may be a parking or plaza area or whatever. So we can use that subregion, assign a different category or a different material to that. It doesn't support surface patterns, that's why. Assign a different material to that. To that piece of the topography to start to show that. Okay? We got some tools here for site and parking components. We'll look at site components. These are going to be things like trees, maybe some some site furnishings, if you will, benches, those kinds of things, bike stands, that stuff, or construction. So we've got some trees in here, and we can just start to pick and place these on our topo, and they will follow the topography. and let us start to make that look like a little bit more of a real site. These particular trees are RPC content, which stands for Rich Photorealistic Content. There's some of that comes with Revit out of the box, and there's some of it that is out there that you can buy, but it will let you, use something that looks like a real tree. So when you render this or you look at this in a realistic view, those trees look a little bit less like cutouts and more like trees. And there's a few options in there. You can see, spin that thing around, look up that hill a little bit. It kind of looks like a tree, as opposed to the little cutout. Okay. The parking components, they will follow the topography. The challenge with the parking is as you lay it out and copy and array these things, if you start to copy and array, they're gonna copy and array in the plane that you placed the first one, so it's not all going to follow the topography. So it's not the best tool to do that kind of thing, but again, start to communicate the design and show the building in context a little bit. You can do that. You would use that same split surface like this, like we did here. So in fact, we can oops, not that. We can edit this boundary, and if we want to show this in here, wants me to finish that. Wasn't sure about that. So we use that same split surface. So the site tools are not, again, they're not great. You're not gonna do any engineering with them. But if you work with them a little bit, you can communicate your design a little more effectively and put it in context. I've worked with Revit for over 10 years, and a lot of other things about the program have been updated and changed and improved. The site tools are lagging behind at this point. So there's some other tools out there. We're talking about InfraWorks is a tool that is for infrastructure planning and design, and I'm looking forward to some more closer integration with Revit with that. It's a fairly new product. Any questions on site stuff? Okay. So rendering. Okay. We already looked at placing cameras earlier today. Let me get back to one of these, if I can find one of these views. No, not that one. Let me find a decent view to work with. Where's the one that I always use? This will work, I think. That's as good as any, I guess. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my site back on so we get a little bit of context. Okay, we've got two different options to do rendering directly in Revit. Okay, the first one is to render on our local desktop computer, and to do that, we get in a 3D view here, and down in our drawing controls or in our view menu, we've got a render tool that will bring up our rendering dialog. So walking through some of the settings here, we've got a quality setting that is gives us some default draft, low, medium, high, best.
Where's that render?
It's on the view ribbon, and down in the bottom of you've got the little teapot. Did you find it? Did you find it? Okay. So we can set this, do some custom settings here to really fine tune our renderings. Most of the time when I use this, I use this for quick draft rendering. So I'm doing down at the lower end of this. Really, if you higher end things, you may want to move to a different application or in the cloud. So we can set the resolution for, if we're just going to view it on screen, or if we want to generate something that's going to be high enough resolution to print, we can do that. Our sun and lighting settings here, these are the same ones we looked at earlier. So any presets we set earlier, if we set a still rendering for a specific location at a specific time and day, we use all those same settings here for lighting that we looked at earlier. We've got an option for background here. So again, we can use an image if we've got a picture, an image of a background that we want to use to help put our project in context. We can just use a solid color to render against, maybe just a white, or we can let Revit generate a sky with some range of cloudiness there. So whatever the case may be, we've got some image control adjustment here that we can make. On the exposure and the color saturation, those things after we render our project. So let's go ahead and once we have all that set, we'll go ahead and hit render. Depending on your processor and memory in your computer and your video card, this may take just a couple minutes. I don't think this will take too long. And I don't think I'm going to get very good results. Yeah, it's way overexposed. I think it's because I have this interior set to interior. Let's set this to the exterior and render it again. That looks a little better. So again, this is at low resolution. It's a little pixelated, but you can kind of see, what kind of shadows you're getting, what kind of colors you're getting, that sort of thing. So you can, as you refine your model, do progressively higher resolution renderings. Once you have one that you like, down here at the bottom, you've got an option. You can save it to the project. which will just save the image, let you give it a name and save it in your project, and it'll show up in the project browser. Or you can export it as an image file. And you've got a few options there, whichever format is best for whatever you're trying to do. Okay. And we'll see here. Now we have in our somewhere in our, here we go. We've got renderings in our project browser with that rendering, and then we could place that. That's just a capture of that rendering. It's just an image that's in our file that we could place on a sheet. Okay. So for an interior view, which one was it? There we go. That's good. So for an interior view, similar process. We want to make sure we set our lighting scheme right. We've got interior and exterior lighting settings. For interior, well, for both really, we can do the sun only, and let the sun provide all the lighting, or we can use any artificial lighting that's built into the model. Okay, so what that will do is any lighting properties that are built into the lights that are placed in the project, it'll render those lighting characteristics. Okay. Those lights we can control a little bit by grouping them together. So here in this project, these are all just ungrouped lights. They're just they're not really controlled by area or anything. But if let me jump over to a ceiling plan and show you how that would work. So I could, in my ceiling plan here, start to pick some of these light fixtures here, and add a light group here. When I have some of these light fixtures selected, I can create a new group. We'll call it entry area, and add those lights to it. I think I added those lights to it. Oh, I need to create the group first and then add the lights to it. Okay. So now my lights are in that group, and that's those lights right there. So when I get into the render dialog, I can control those lights in that group. So why you want to do this is if you've got 500 lights in your model, or however many lights are in here, and you're rendering, you're only seeing the 20 or 30 in this entry area. You don't want your computer processor to have to think about those other 400 some odd lights and calculate all that light in the background that you're not seeing. So you can just turn those off. You've also got the capability here. This dimming is it's a percentage, a 0 to 1. So 0 being off, 1 being all the way on. So you can dim lights in certain areas if you want that effect in your rendering. Okay.
Do you have a library of lights? Or can I be a-
Sure. So these lights in this project, this is an older sample project. I really need to get an updated version of this. Back to the ceiling plan. A lot of stuff going on. Okay, these lights in this project. If I edit this family, I don't want to get too far into the family editor, but it has a light source down here. It's pretty basic. It doesn't really relate to the geometry. it's not really what you want. So if I look at, let's look at a light from the just the out-of-the-box library, okay? So going to lighting, and I really, for the best results, you want to work with the light fixtures that are designed for the MEP, because they're the most current, the most up-to-date. They have the most, all of the most realistic parameters built into them, predefined into them, okay? So I'm going to go into the MEP library here, and let's look for a pendant linear. There we go. So this is maybe similar to that light that was in our project, and it's face-based, so it looks like it's sticking up, but it would hang down from the ceiling. This plane would be the ceiling, and you can see it's got a light source here that is a little more realistic. And when we look at the parameters for this family, if I can find it, down here under photometrics, there's a photometric web file which has an IES file linked in, which is the photometric data from the light manufacturer on what the photometrics for this light are. So when you use that light in a rendering, you're going to get realistic lighting effect from that light. Okay. Any lights that you get from a lighting manufacturer should have that built into the family. Okay, and that's what you would look for in the family definition if it has that photometric web file assigned to it. So, we can do a quick rendering of this one just to see what it looks like. Interior, sun, artificial. Go ahead and render. Okay, and you can see I'm on low, and it's not taking a lot of time, but that time is going to go up exponentially as I crank the quality up and the resolution up, and a lot of times what I want to be able to do is to go through iterations of a rendering quickly and make some changes and improve it. So that's rendering on the desktop. Another tool that you can use that is maybe a little more efficient is to render in the cloud. So you need to have an Autodesk 360 login, which I have, and you can set one of those up if you don't have one already. Just go to autodesk.com and log in, and it'll ask you to set one up. Then I can render in the cloud, and what this is going to ask me to do is to select the 3D views, and then it'll send that stuff out to the cloud, send me an email back when it's complete. So I'm going to go ahead and render, if I can remember which views. Okay. Entry 2, and I could pick multiple views here, so I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of them. Still image, standard quality. I can select an image size. Settings are a little bit different. To find the format that I want. So if I want a high quality image or PNG, whatever format I want to work with. And then start rendering. It's going to gather up the information about the model and send it out to the Autodesk servers, cloud servers, and they'll process it. And when it's done, I'll get an email back, and I can go ahead and go and log in and download my rendered images. So this takes just a few seconds, and it's maybe just as long as the other one, but as you move towards higher quality images, higher resolution images, the rendering time will take longer. This will get me back to where I can go ahead and continue working, wait for that email to come back to see what that image looks like. So it's not tying up your resources while it's doing that.
This is my rendering, it just more quality, but better time, basically.
Yeah, it gets you, it lets the power of the cloud do all the work for you, and you're back to work, going on with whatever else you need to do. It's that processing time that it took to package it up and send it. It's not really going to take much longer,
Yeah.
to do that, unless you're doing, just a whole bunch of images, and it'll process on their processors a lot faster than on your desktop.
So they're always like the highest quality when you send them? Or no?
You've got some options there when you render. You can do standard quality or final quality, so you will get them back quicker. If they're lower, if the image size is smaller, and if the quality is set to standard, you get them back quicker. All right.
But the fact that they do it in the cloud doesn't mean that it is the higher quality. It is whatever you are.
Right, it's right. You got the quality settings. The difference is it's using that processor speed, not this processor speed. It's not tying up this processor. So I can do a higher quality image by sending it to the cloud, and it's not tying up my computer. I can get back to work on some other things. Setting up some other views or whatever, back to my design work, whatever the case may be, and it's not tying up my computer for that. And it will, rendering, if you're doing a decent size rendering, if you're doing it on your laptop, you may start it at the end of the day, and hopefully it's done tomorrow morning, kind of thing. Whereas most of the ones I've done, I haven't done a lot of rendering in the cloud, but most of it has been back in less than an hour. So. Okay, doing all right. So let's look at the materials a little bit more. So we've looked at a couple of the tabs on the material library. We'll look at it. Let's see, I got one of those renderings back already. Sign in. Oh, there it is. So it's a little higher resolution than the one that I did directly in Revit, and I can see I don't necessarily like this freshly mown grass, so I can go through more iterations of that rendering quicker, and not tie up my machine. So that's kind of when you get into rendering, that's kind of the wash, rinse, repeat is the more times you can go through that cycle, the higher quality you can get. Okay. So looking at the materials a little bit, I've gone into it through the wall structure and the ceiling structure and different places. Here on the manage ribbon, we can get to the materials all the way over here on the left. So this will bring up our material library. So that's fine. So this list that we have here are all of the materials that are defined in our project. So they're not necessarily assigned to any geometry or being used. They're defined in our project. Again, the graphics tab is the shaded or hidden line graphics view with the shading color and the cut and surface patterns. Identity we looked at with the keynote, and there's some other fields there that we can schedule those if we're interested in doing that. And then the appearance is where the rendering material is defined. Okay, so we got some description here of what this material is and some keywords. So when we search for on a particular keyword, it will come up with all of those materials that have those keywords listed. We've got rendering different settings here to define, this is a glass material. Where is that defined at? Okay, what place is this asset? Okay. So we've got different settings here to define what that material looks like when it's rendered. So for glazing here, we've got different colors of glass, different reflectance. If we want to have a tint to it, whatever the case may be. If it's something like a brick or stone, we would have some different bump maps to give it texture, and those sorts of things. This material's not very great. Down here at the bottom, we've got an asset browser here that will let us open some different libraries. So out of the box, we've got a couple different libraries. We've got that should come when you install, that have a lot more materials that you can choose from. And I would just pick one of these, and let's just double click on it, and it should, yeah, it will, okay, they've changed this. So I would create a new material. And then go to the asset browser, find the one I want, double click on it, and it will bring the properties of that material into whatever material I have selected. Okay. So there are a number of things to choose from, and usually best practice is find one that's close, and use it as a starting point to modify, if you're doing something a little more custom. If you've got a specific masonry you might want to start with this CMU and then come in and replace the image with something from the manufacturer or from your material library or a picture that you've taken, whatever the case may be. So that's right, right. That exactly. So that's what I was just saying. You can the workflow would be to start with a material that's similar to what you're using. So if you've got, you know, some masonry or something, you may want to, you know, create one in here that is, you know, brick or whatever the case may be. It's not unique. Oops. And then go to the one of these libraries, find something that is close to what you're doing, okay? And by double clicking on that, it brings those settings into that material in my library, and then from there I can say, okay, I don't like this image here. I want to change that image to a picture that I've taken or whatever, and I could browse to it and select it, and then it would use that one.
The image is 1 foot or the inches, and we change that or
So this is allows you to scale your sample size, so to get it to the real world, you know, size.
many times we have boundaries, actually.
Right. So there's, you know, the material definition here, depending on the type of material you pick, if it's glass or masonry, there's different characteristics. So this one's got a bump map, and it's just a black and white version of that same image that defines the, you know, the light to dark defines the bumpiness of that. So that's where you would assign that. And you've got some controls over, you know, how much of that, how bumpy it makes it, I guess. And if you want a different sample up here, you can, sometimes it's easier to see on a little different sample image. Okay. I think it's about 3:30, so it's, I guess that's our time for our last break of the day, so take another 5 or 10 minute break, and okay. Unless anyone's got any questions first.
I have a random question. In Revit, you know how when you like draw something it has the dimensions of it, how do you change how accurate it is so you don't want to see like 72 and 120 inches? So you don't see that dimensions be that accurate.
Okay, so, you know, when I draw this,
Yeah, on mine that's down in here, so 120.
okay, so here on our manage, we've got project units, and that's where that is going to be controlled. You've also got where is it? There's also a control for the temporary dimensions. And I think it's off the bottom of my menu. but that's where that would be controlled. Should be anyways. Okay. Anything else? Okay, take a little break. So when you guys are downloading it and installing, are you deciding so it sounds like we're using the install now method, which has to go back and download and have a browser down in Flash.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
are you downloading the whole package and then installing, or are you considering installing the whole?
I just press the install now, so that's the whole thing.
So it sounds like you need to do the browser download and then install.
Well, I went ahead and what I ended up doing having to do was on installing the library, and then reinstall, and then pressing the install now button again. And it's like, oh, well, you already have everything else installed. You want to install your library? Yeah.
Yeah.